Before Rome became an empire, the formidable Roman Republic was already a sprawling Mediterranean superpower, capable of projecting its power well beyond the Italian peninsula. At this earlier stage, Rome was already very rich, and much of this prosperity circulated in the shape of the Republican Denarius. Different from the imperial coinage, always focused on reinforcing the power structure centered around the emperor, the Republican Denarius was overseen by the Senate, and its overall administration of the minting was changed every year, when three aspiring politicians, the TRIUMVIR MONETALIS, were responsible for the central mint. So this constant changing in who ran the mint meant that during the Republican period, the Denarius had an absolute explosion of diversity in designs. With every passing year, ambitious young aristocrats tried to imprint their political messages and promises the best way they could in these lovely metal discs. Today, let's skim the surface of this huge niche of Roman numismatics that is the Republican period and look at some gorgeous examples. Let's go! As I've mentioned on my previous episode of The History of the Denarius, this new denomination was created during the troubled times of the Punic Wars, as the Roman state needed to decrease the size of its previous silver proto-denarii, the didrachma, as well as establish a standardized coin which would increase the efficiency of state taxation and administration of its budget. Let's jump on our first coin of the day, an example of this early denarius. This one was struck between 209 and 208 BC. Curiously enough, not in the mint of Rome, instead somewhere south, probably Sicily. This new denomination had established for itself some basic visual characteristics at first, most definitely after some heated back and forth in the Roman Senate. It was something quite neutral. It was established that the obverse would have the representation of the Roman state itself, incarnate as a patron goddess, Dea Roma, a clear nudge to the Greek Athena, also protector of civilized states that would show up quite often on Greek coins. This obverse would also be required to receive a denomination mark, in this case the Roman numeral 10 as an X, behind Dea Roma's head. This tied the new denomination to the much older system based on bronze coins used in Italy for centuries. The new denarius would be worth 10 asses, and later it would be tariffed to 16 as the bronze coinage was reduced in size. So, a change from one silver coin to another silver coin may sound like something unimportant in the grand scheme of things, but this was a very intelligent move. Now Rome had a coin that was used internally with a face value, which could be manipulated by the state to guarantee the stable internal supply, and the high-quality silver coin, in standard size once again, that would be valued outside of its borders, sort of like connecting Rome to the silver-using Mediterranean trade network, particularly so with the East and the Greek world. The reverse, considering we're talking about wartime, features Castor and Pollux, also called the Dioscuri, the divine twins that, according to Roman myth, saved the city early in its history by leading them into battle. A reverse just adequate to a time when Rome felt truly threatened by Carthage. On the lower part, we have a simple but straightforward legend, Roma. But as time moved on and the Republic moved into less threatening times, this fascinating event happened to the denarius. As the Senate stopped giving so much attention to the design that was put on coins, these same TRIUMVIR MONETALIS, the young magistrates responsible for the mints, had a very smart idea, very fitting of their nature as aspiring politicians. You see, these men were at the bottom of the cursus honorum, a series of public positions one had to go through, sort of like a stairway, to go until the highest position of consul. The smartest ones among these realized they were responsible for striking these very valuable metal discs, and these discs would be on everyone's back pocket. So many started to propagandize themselves to the public. The more discreet ones would simply relate to great feats and accomplishments of their ancestors. But the more unscrupulous among these would practically make campaign promises. Our second coin of the day is around 100 years younger, so to speak, than the first one. So dated between 113 and 112 BC, under Titus Didius. Didius would be consul in Rome and proconsul ruling Hispania, so he turned out to be a major politician. But at this year, he was just starting out his political life. If we look at the obverse of this coin, it isn't really anything extraordinary. We see, once again, the bust of Roma, and very nicely engraved, much better than the previous one. And now, instead of a 10, we have a 16 assess value. It is on the reverse, however, where we find the truly fascinating part of this coin. It is theorized that Didius would run the following year to the position of Aedile, or Aedile, a higher position in the cursus honorum. This position was quite prestigious, as among other responsibilities, they were responsible for organizing and throwing games in Rome. Therefore, a good and popular Aedile was very well known and would be set for a very important political life. And so, he just made a promise of games on the coins he did. The reverse shows a gladiatorial match, with two fighters facing each other, armed with swords and shields. This is fantastic. It shows how politicians have always resorted to easy, populist approaches. In this case, the old Roman tradition of bread and circuses. And they were willing to squeeze as many promises as they could, wherever they could, even on coins if you think about it. The lower part of the coin reads Titius Deidius, another way of spelling his name. We lack the records to see if Titius went through with his promise and if he actually threw games, but since he reached the highest position of consul, he definitely got what he wanted, which was to climb the political career. So this coin was sorta like a successful propaganda move. So sticking to the political theme and going to our next Denarius, let's have a look at something quite interesting that we don't always think about when talking about ancient Rome: voting. The Republican period used democratic elections for full-right citizens, which were a minority, mind you, to resolve multiple issues on the local as well as the state level. It was a flawed system with disproportionate weights towards the elites and where the poor and disenfranchised didn't really have much of a voice. But it happened, it was frequent, and even small towns used voting to solve local issues. So for this piece, we're headed to the year 63 BC, where another aspiring politician, Lucius Cassius Longinus, tried to evoke the memory of his grandfather's achievements to aggrandize himself. This was quite common in Rome. The name of your family is what really counted, and if you had a prestigious grandfather, you could appropriate yourself of his fame as a personal show of your own virtue. So on the obverse, we see the goddess Vesta, or Vesta. But why Vesta? Well, because Lucius's grandfather presided over a famous trial of 3 potentially unchaste Vestal virgins, the women responsible for taking care of the Temple of Vesta in Rome. Quite a smart move by Lucius here. He makes reference for a well-known event, but no one was able to point him a finger and claim he was doing self-propaganda with coins. After all, choosing to depict a goddess as a design was a very typical and pious thing for a good Roman to do. The reverse, however, does not make any attempt to hide his self-aggrandizing move. We see the legends Longinus Triumvir, and prominent on the reverse we have a Roman voter, probably a senator, casting a vote on a ballot. Lucius's grandfather was also responsible for the establishment of the Lex Cassia, which introduced the secret vote in court jury decisions, a major move to remove corruption and intimidation in the Roman legal system. So instead of having one say his vote openly and loudly, we have here someone just writing it on a paper and casting their vote in a ballot. But hey, you know what? Let's not make a video purely about Roman politics in here, because we're here to look about pretty coins. Some designs were not chosen solely based on how much political clout could be exploited from them. Certain TRIUMVIR MONETALIS chose to instead make unique designs that would call the attention to their uniqueness. And probably one of my favorite ones is this one, struck under Titus Caricius in 46 BC, where he issues denarii that celebrate the very thing of coins and coinage. On the obverse, we're presented with the image of Juno Moneta, the incarnation, or in a sense, the spirit behind the idea of coinage, of commerce, of the flow of prosperity between people. The very Roman Mint also doubled as a temple dedicated to Juno, making coins for nearly 1,000 years, from the appearance of coinage among the Romans all the way to after the fall of the Western Empire. And the reverse is probably one of the most unique designs out there. We see the implements that were used when striking a coin. Right at the center, we have an iron anvil, generally with the obverse design of a coin, and above it, the mobile die, which would typically receive the reverse. To our left, we see a pair of thongs, which serve as an evidence that the Romans indeed heated up their coins before striking. So they needed said thongs because the metal blanks would be incredibly hot. To the right, we see the hammer, which would be used to imprint the design on the blank through a couple of very strong blows. And to the top of the design, over all of these implements, we see the legends making reference to the official, Titus Caricius. A very well-rounded and curious letter reverse. It's not artistically impressive or something, but it tells a story. It's really fascinating. And since we're talking about unique designs, here's another one I particularly like. This time we take a break from the self-propaganda of mint officials, and instead we have a coin celebrating a military victory over Rome's enemies. This particular one was struck in 119 BC under Marcus Furius Filius, and celebrating a victory over the Allobogres tribe, located in modern-day Switzerland. The obverse is more generic and mythological, but it shows a very nice symmetry to it, courtesy of the god Janus. Janus represented transformation, the passage of time, the concept of past and present, so this is why he had two faces, facing opposite sides, as he was eternally contemplating the past and looking for the future. The legends around the bust of the god harmonize quite well with the symmetrical design, so the entire coin has this very well-rounded look to it. And we can also read at the letters the first part of the mint official's name, Marcus Furi LF. The reverse shows the military event the coin was supposed to celebrate. You see, traditionally, when an army defeated the other, a tropaion, the origin of our word trophy, was erected at the site of the battle. This small monument was decorated with the very best swords, armors, helmets, and shields from the vanquished enemies, and left on the field as a monument, as an offering to the gods. Pillaging a tropaion was a major offense, and someone caught doing it could expect to have some part of their body chopped off, at least. So we can see Dea Roma with an olive branch over the tropaion, symbolizing Rome's victory. And it's a very intricate trophy when we look at it a little bit closer. We can see a nice armor, a helmet, shield, and a sword. At the base of the monument, two extra shields and two carnixes, the war trumpets with an animal head, typically used by the Celtic tribes. The legends and his name that started on the obverse, Filius. And we can also see Roma written on the right part. Such a lovely coin, just full of details. But I've left the best for last. Probably my favorite design from the Republican period due to its elegance, its intricacy. And it gives us two very different mythological figures on each side. So a particularly lovely coin for those who like to see Greco-Roman supernatural characters. This coin comes from the year 47 BC. Under the minting authority of Lucius Plautius Plancus. The year in particular makes this coin a bit more interesting. This coin was circulating around the time of the assassination of Caesar, among some other fascinating events from the late Roman Republic, and its many civil wars, political drama, and all of this. The obverse is simple, yet so nicely made. We see Medusa creeping at us. She has this sort of slightly satisfied look to her face, almost with a little grin, and we can see her hair flowing in this very natural manner. Under her, the first names of the monarch, Lucius Plautius. If the obverse was nice, the reverse is just so busy, so full of artistry and full of movement. There's some debate about who is the winged woman at the center. Some say it's Victory, as she's very common on Roman coins and she looks like that. But I would argue that's actually Aurora, the goddess of dawn, the sister of Sol, the sun god. Interestingly enough, Aurora is how many modern Romance languages still call the sunrise. The sun god was often depicted as a crowned deity, riding on a chariot across the sky, similar to how Apollo would be shown in Greek mythology. Aurora would every dusk get Sol's horses and take care of them, and every morning before sunrise, she would prepare his chariot once again, so her brother could cross the skies and rule over the land. The reverse is just so full of movement. Look at the flowing dress, particularly so in the lower part of her body, and each horse is moving into a different direction. Truly a very talented die engraver worked in this coin. Collecting and studying Republican denarii is, in my view, a bit more complicated than Imperial denarii. While the majority of Imperial coins followed a somewhat simple formula that allowed for quick identification once you used them, Republican coins are incredibly varied, and each single coin is a world in its own and a design completely on its own, worthy of extensive research. So what about you, collectors? Any Roman Republican Denarius collectors amongst you? Have you got a Roman Republican coin? Let us know in the comment section down below. Also, leave a like in this video if you liked it, and consider subscribing for more content. So I hope you liked it, happy collecting, and I'll see you soon.